brains mostly underground, all supporting mothering smaller trees, knowing the relationships and taking care of them biochemically, the same way our brain works, by the way. Looks a lot like our brain underground, actually. It's kind of amazing, right? Well, Aristotle is again 380, 370, 360 BC. So basically, you're looking at works that are before all of our modern science helps us understand the interconnectedness of the various kinds of life that we have. By the way, I highly recommend over the next couple of days, if you get the chance, to watch the list. There's 4 links to BBC movies on Aristotle's Lagoon. Highly recommend it. Those 4 links are 15 minutes a piece. And so you end up with roughly an hour program from the BBC. Absolutely gorgeous description of Aristotle's work on the fish and botany in the lagoon that he lived at for at least 2 years, I think. So have a look at that. It's really beautifully done and shows how important Aristotle is for where we're going. But when we're still looking at Plato, Aristotle's going to rebel against this. This is considered to be from the Middle Period. Aging love and the definitions of justice. Remember, this is where they fight over things, the interest of the stronger, give to each his own, tell the truth and pay your debts. The ring of Gyges is kind of an important argument here. There's other ones. There's your 3 basic arguments. And by the way, the 331C, that's the Stephanus numbers. Did I mention that at all? Stephanus numbers, that's when they collected all of Plato's works in roughly 1500. The edition was given a series of numbers to indicate what text and so on. So you could find a particular line or a sequence of lines in Plato's works. And the same sort of way that you could also look up things in the Bible or the Quran by the number of the sequence of the text, right? So they revisit some of the arguments in Book 2 and get into better, this is where the Gyges hypothetical magic ring comes up. The city and the soul, you're comparing the city and the individual soul. The soul has 3 parts as well. I guess the best metaphor of the soul that is kind of easy to remember is the charioteer who's driving a chariot with 2 horses. The one horse wants to go this way and the other horse wants to go this way, and the charioteer is the one that keeps them together. So this is kind of an interesting metaphor that Socrates, aka Plato, uses in order to describe your dilemma. How much of this are you going to be able to learn? And do you come into the world keeping in mind the idea that your soul is the same? Each iteration that it enters into a body, right? It's the same soul, and the body you get isn't you. That's your house, the prison house of the soul, while you're in this particular state, right? But your soul, the real you, is the same and has a particular character. You're a good one or a bad one. You're one that's attracted to physical things or spiritual things or knowledge, right? So 3 different levels of soul. Which kind of soul? Can the soul change? Seems like it can't. Seems like it's itself, from one individual life, to the next. Your soul remains the same. No idea that you could become a roach next life because you were nasty to people, and maybe you'll learn better behavior. That's a Hindu view, right? But if you're a Platonist, your soul, and once the Christian worldview comes in, remember the soul has a unique start as opposed to being a continuous reincarnation. But what do you think? This is my quiz question for today. Right? Should have actually said it's fixed always. I think it's just fixed from birth. That's my quiz question. If you prefer, you could also work with the concept of soul. Do you even have a soul? And if you do, what is it? I was raised believing I had a soul and that was the most important part of me. In fact, I was scared to death because when I was a kid and I read this was in my catechism when I was a kid, and as you can see, baptism gives you a pure soul, and so you have a white milk bottle, no spots in it. And venial sin gives you a bunch of, any venial sin. Anybody know the difference between a venial and a mortal sin? Killing someone is a mortal sin. Unless, of course, it's in self-defense or defense of your country, if there's excuses here, right? Doesn't mean killing chickens, because you eat them, right? But in any case, venial sins are things like lying, and not a serious case, borrowing somebody something without telling them and not giving it back, aka stealing, etc. It depends on the nature of theft, etc. Yes, everybody gets it. There's some immortal sins. And yes.
So you said that killing a chicken isn't a mortal sin because you eat it, right?
I've never heard Christians refer to killing animals.
But killing a person is.
Killing
what if you eat that person?
Murder. Damn.
I mean, does that mean a cannibal is not committing a mortal sin?
That could be.
No.
Maybe Paul has an answer here?
God says in the Bible, right, somewhere early on, that basically everything there on earth is there for you to steward and to use, basically. So, a Christian wouldn't say chicken is okay to kill because we eat it, and say it's okay to kill because God gave them to us.
Lambs.
But God didn't give people to us,
Are you sure? I mean, did he say that to you?
I might have. I guess we could go to Thomas Aquinas. He might know. Maybe not. That might not have come up.
I also know that there's an argument where there's a difference between spirit and soul. The animals have spirit, which gives them personality, and humans have souls. Killing a soul is different than killing a spirit.
That's in Harry Potter too, because the Dementors will suck out your soul. Yeah.
I would just ask there's always a line of which animals would you consider for food versus for a horse, which you use for mobility, or a dog.
Or a Saint Bernard.
Exactly. It's
I have a Saint Bernard. They're so adorable, and I understand that the Chinese love Saint Bernard.
yeah, so you still use the same principle for a dog as you would for a chicken, where it is in a line.
That's where you grew up. People are animals.
It's a cultural thing, probably. Yeah. Well, interesting, original sin gives you completely black milk bottles, so if you're not baptized before you die, good sound effect, thank you.
So, where did this whole milk bottle thing, why did
Scared me
Jesus
to death.
die for sins?
Because I was imagining I've got a milk bottle in here.
Yeah.
What happens if I fall down and break the glass, you know? But finish your question, sorry.
If Jesus died for Christian sins, then why are we born with a black milk bottle? Yeah.
The original sin, which we'll cover with St. Augustine, who kind of defined it for us, and invented it maybe, actually, is the original fall. You know, Adam and Eve fell. And if you think about it, what is the falling that happens there? They ate of the fruit, not an apple, but they ate of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, right? And thanks to them eating that, we now have the concept of good and evil. Whereas before that, do dogs think of good and evil? Horses, good and evil? They have their preferences, clearly.
Maybe just good.
You had the next question.
So for the differences between the actual sins, where did we come up with the idea between the two? Because your example was lying is one and then killing is another. But if you're taking it from a religious standpoint, for Christians at least, both are in the Ten Commandments. So who then deciphered one from the other?
The Ten Commandments were the original Hebrew,
Yeah.
and this
It's like a cap.
might be Hebraic. I mean, the Hebrew interpretation of all that got very, very complex, perhaps even more complex. But I don't know at what point it suddenly ended up with this. But I know from my granny that, you know, if you just are in this state when you die, you just go to purgatory. She called it purgatory. Purgatory, was, purgatorio. Good possibility that the person who invented all of this was the Italian poet Dante in his Purgatorio, Cielo? Is Cielo heaven? And then the other one is the Inferno, right? Hell, right? And he invented levels of sins to go with his levels of these places that he tours with a guide, right? And it's absolutely fascinating. It was so in vogue that Galileo drew
This dude said that he went to all those?
no.
I'm confused.
Dante's Inferno.
Okay, so it's not
So
that
this is-
scripture-based, it's interpretation-based.
He was pissed off at a whole bunch of enemies.
Oh.
And he designed a particular level of punishment for each of those that he hated. And it was at a time where the church didn't have a very good process of saying, that's crap. And so it got so popular and everybody liked it that it became part of the religion. This is Galileo's attempt to draw what hell looks like based on Dante's poem.
I'm not sure Dante was, I'm not sure it became quote unquote accepted as a canon, but it did enter the sort
Right,
of,
right.
it became
In
almost
fact-
like a Christian myth.
In fact, just a couple of years ago, the church announced, we never actually said that there was such a thing as a place where children go that die before they get baptized. We never actually said that. It was not canon. So they came out in defense of themselves against that kind of thing. that was called limbo. Have you ever heard of it? Anybody ever heard of limbo? You still mean limbo, you know, this budget is in limbo right now because, you know, if you don't get everybody to vote for it, the country will be bankrupt. September 21st? I don't know, you know, that happens every once in a while. But so, I don't know, I think the original question there was, where did these levels of sin come from? And gosh, and the interesting thing about original sin is, since Adam